Everyone in Scotland, I think, is delighted that Clackmannanshire did well, but the local authority did a lot of good things in terms of how it used its money. First of all, it's a small local authority. It's got just 16 primaries and 3 secondaries, and it chose to use its money from the Scottish Office in a very focused way, focusing just on 7 schools and 2 projects. One project was a comparison between synthetic and analytic phonics, and the other project was a home link project where they funded teachers to go and work in 4 of their schools, doing things like setting up library borrowing services, homework clubs, helping in classrooms, doing home visits, and a whole host of things to facilitate relationships around literacy between the school and the home. We don't know whether the children's reading improved because of the Home Link Intervention project or because of the phonics project. It's likely that both had a success. It's important to remember, however, that Clackmannan is not the best performing local authority in Scotland. It's about average.
To be fair, before the government decided to impose phonics as the preeminent reading method, Jim Rose was asked to have a look at the evidence. So what persuaded him that phonics was the best way to teach our children to read?
Clackmannanshire was an interest of the Select Committee at the time, in which all these issues obviously were being raised. And I have to tell you, there are a lot of Clackmannanshires on this side of the border as well. And when we saw the quality of that work, which people describe as synthetic, but it's the ingredients that we need to think about. What's going on there that makes it easy for children to crack the code, to be able to segment, blend, and do all those things that are necessary to understand the words on the page, to recognise the words on the page. And the Clackmannanshire experience certainly was germane to all of that. I mean, it was certainly a very positive outcome that they were getting there. But it was only one of several very important pieces of evidence that we looked at.
There are lots of studies from around the world which lead us to conclude that using early phonics teaching enables children to read more accurately, more quickly, and with greater degree of understanding. This comes from America, from Australia, some from New Zealand, in fact some from Sweden and Denmark, Germany, and even England and Scotland.
Reading is not a linear process where you deal with phonic work first and then deal with comprehension, creativity after that. These things are done at the beginning simultaneously. Phonic work is a time-limited sequence. Once children have become skilled in that way, they use those skills very obviously to learn more, not just in English but right across the curriculum. But the comprehension strand of all of this, the language comprehension, starts well before phonic work, continues through it and is enriched by it. And then of course we're in the game of children having learned to read, read to learn, and off we go.
I think the case is still not proven. Capturing a child's imagination is often the first step in starting to read, and that's what real books do. I will always insist that the only way in which we learn how all letters and all sounds match up, or not, is through recognising whole words. And the only way in which we recognise whole words is seeing them in use in sentences, stories and poems.
Do I like writing poems? I do, and I like making up poems. And the very last poem I made up was a poem that I had to make up because we were all going on a journey. I was on at a place called the Barbican, and there were lots of poets, and we had to go on a journey, and I had to write a poem to help us go on the journey. And I thought, right, how do we go on a journey in a poem? It goes like this. You got to move it to prove it. Move it to prove it. In a plane, on a train, take a trip, on a ship, you got to move it to prove it. Move it to prove it. Take a hike, take a bike, use your feet on the street. You got to move it to prove it. Move it to prove it. Are we there? Where? Are we near? We're here. You got to move it to prove it.
In my view, all the effort put into measuring, tracking and testing pupils is liable to achieve the exact opposite of what the government intends. I'm writing to Hackney Council to complain about... For instance, at Key Stage 3 and GCSE level, pupils are endlessly tested on their ability to write a letter of complaint to the council. Deliberately. Now, I've been forced as a grown-up to write many a letter to Hackney Council, and it's one of the most boring activities I ever face. It's pure torture. Faithfully. So what on earth is the point of making lively children do it in class? It's madness. English teacher Dave Shorman agrees.
The national curriculum, to an extent, can limit the creativity in the way that you teach. I think particularly in writing, there seems to me here to be a much greater emphasis placed on non-fictional, transactional, factual sort of writing at the expense of narrative writing.
At Key Stage 3, one of the boxes English teachers need to tick is empathy. It's Friday afternoon and Hampstead School's Class 9 are studying the curious incident of the dog in the night time.
So here we go. We've got Christopher and why he doesn't tell lies.
The narrator, Christopher, is a 14-year-old boy with Asperger's syndrome. He's had a misunderstanding with that elusive species, a bobby on the beat.
What do you think Christopher's dad thinks about Christopher hitting this police officer, Edwin?
Because the officer was like provoking him, kind of, because he's autistic, so he thinks that the police officer was provoking him, something like that.
What did he do to provoke him? I think we can use that word, but we could only use it for Christopher. What did he do which upset Christopher? Sam?
He was asking too many questions too fast.
That was part of it, and he did one other thing, Blondie. Touched him. Who can feedback? Who's got something to say about the relationship?
David Shorman gently probes to see whether his class understands the complexities of the father-son relationship.
What was the word that you used?
Frustrated.
Frustrated. Why did you choose that word?
Because his dad's getting quite annoyed. He keeps asking questions and questions and questions, and he won't give up till he finds out a proper answer that he thinks is legit.
That's quite negative. Is there anything positive about Christopher's relationship with his father?
Because his dad's like patient with him and puts up with him, and they do seem to love each other, I reckon.
Okay, so there seems to be some love in the family between them. Good.
Well, because he has this problem, his dad has to constantly give him attention, cook for him and get things for him, and so he can't really go out of the house unless he's going to school. So because they're so close to each other and constantly bonding, they probably love each other a lot.
We can sit on the fence for that one. We can have people either side, that's fine. But what we are going to do now, we're going to be doing some hot seating. This is like the idioms we drew the other day. It's a hot seat. Okay? Somebody is going to become Christopher's father, and it is your chance to ask Christopher's dad what it's like living with Christopher. Your job in your groups is to come up with 3 to 5 questions for Christopher's dad.
And you get frustrated when Christopher attacks you or not being able to hug him or love him.
Okay. Meet Christopher's father. Who would like to go first? Thank you, Ben.
How do you feel about Christopher getting arrested?
I'm obviously disappointed about it and wish he hadn't, but I don't think it's his fault, and hopefully it won't happen again and it will stay out of trouble.
Do you ever feel really frustrated and stressed out with Christopher that you just want to leave?
No, I'd never leave him. What sort of father would I be? I do get frustrated, but I'd never even consider leaving him.
It's all excellent stuff. Developing empathy during English lessons might just possibly lead to more communication within relationships, fewer people inclined to bully and injure others, and who knows, a healthier society in future, as well as getting all those A to C passes at GCSE. Wow! But surely it's all a bit late in the process. Why wait until year 9? If you teach 4 or 5-year-olds from real books, get them engaged and read to them regularly, then they'll develop empathy naturally. Take a look at my audience at Martin School. Are they laughing at me or with me because they empathise with my younger self?
It's getting towards bedtime and me and my mum were sitting watching telly. And my mum says to me, Michael, time for bed now. And suddenly my ears don't work. And I get up and I think I want to go on watching that programme, so I go round behind the sofa, okay, and I think if I stop breathing, she won't know I'm here, so I'll just disappear myself so I can go on watching the telly. And she goes, Michael, I know you're there. And I go, I'm not. And she goes, what are you talking about?
One of the joys of primary schools, up until fairly recently, once we got rid of the 11 plus, was that it was a space for children to enjoy and love learning. At 7, most European countries and the States, children have only been in school for a year. And what we've been doing is we've been saying you've got to learn to read from the age of 4. Most countries don't actually introduce children to books until about the age of 6. They're just read to up until that point. And what we're doing by introducing the test so early on is labelling a lot of children as failures in reading. And that's just awful, because why would you then ever want to pick up a book? So already we're making them feel unhappy. And from the pleasure principle, how sad. These children don't like reading. That wonderful imagination, that kind of escape that all of us who love reading got, they don't have, because they see reading as very instrumental and something that gets you past a test and a comprehension exercise.
In the end, I think testing and league tables are irrelevant. When you combine that rigmarole with the relentless drilling of phonics, we're loading 5-year-olds with pressure and dullness. A radical rethink is needed. Teachers and children need to be less anxious and more creative. My belief is that schools should turn themselves into publishing houses, producing their pupils' work rather than faffing around with phonics and testing. So instead of children constantly rehearsing what they would read or what they would write, they should plunge straight into the joys of making books, plays, poems for each other, no matter how simple.
One of the crucial things in teaching children to write is getting them to think about the reader, because the reader-writer relationship is the most important. And the problem with what's happening at the moment is you're just thinking about writing in isolation. You're not thinking about the impact that it has on the reader. So if you want to help children to write, you get them to think about who's going to read it. And a very, very powerful motivator then is to make the audience real.
Strangely enough, I'm keen to help my competition and have even more writers around. The younger, the better. That's why I go on performing in schools as part of my quest to advocate the reading of real books and to encourage children to write their own. When I visit schools, children often ask me, do I really like writing books? Yes, I do. Yes, so I do like writing poems. I love it. And it's ever so easy, and every single one of you here can do it. If there's something you don't... Remember what I said right at the very beginning? I said, if there's something you don't like, the best thing you can do about it is write about it. If you hear a conversation you think, that's interesting, write it. There we are. It's that easy.